the museum, which again is housed in the surgery building from 1968, which has a morgue and an autopsy room in the basement, okay, which is open as an exhibit. And when I walked in, there's a jewelry rack on the wall, and before I even rounded the corner, it flew off of the wall and onto the ground. That's probably the most physical thing that's happened to me since I've been here. And you know,
that's pretty physical.
Generation X Paranormal.
Well, hey everybody, welcome back.
Hey everybody.
We're Generation X Paranormal. I'm Logan.
And I'm Nicole.
So we have some fun today.
We have some fun today.
So once I learn English, I'll explain a little bit better.
Yes.
We went to, normally we do some interviews and occasionally we'll pick a topic that we talk about. And today is going to be kind of a combination of both in a way, but also we went somewhere.
Yes,
Can you guys believe we actually freaking went somewhere? And we went to the Glore Psychiatric Museum, and that's in St. Joseph, Missouri.
Yes.
Not too far from where we live. So we were able to go there, and it was graciously, we were invited by Mike and Sam from Epic VIP Events, LLC. And again, thank you so much, guys, for inviting us. And you guys have seen them. They've been on the show. We've done a Facebook Live with them too. So
yeah, actually talking about this very thing. So you need to go check out their page and like and follow them.
Yeah. Like, subscribe, follow, that whole fun stuff.
And they are the ones that arrange this. I mean, they do these tours of, haunted locations and they get access to places that maybe you can't get access to. So you need to check them out.
Yeah, for sure. And they're a lot of fun. Now, keep in mind, we haven't really done a lot of these. In fact, that was the first one we've done with like an event like that.
Yes.
So I really don't have a ton to go by, but just by seeing and hearing about some other events that people have gone to, they're amazing. They're very personable, and
they are. And number one on my list was to learn how to do this the right way. And these are the people for that. So, and they're so kind. And Erica Burton's also, helps with that, and she's fantastic.
Yeah, she's a rock star.
And yeah, there's so much more we'll get to. But
yeah,
we just wanted to shout them out and,
absolutely
we'll get started.
So the first thing we're going to do is, because we probably could sit here and read to you the history of the Glore Psychiatric Museum, but I'm pretty sure you guys might not enjoy that as much as hearing it from somebody who actually works there.
Yes.
So we have a staff member who we met when we went down to the, we went up to St. Joseph, and we did the tour, or the investigation, I should say. And he's a staff member, and his name's Jerrad Hardin. And we'll go ahead and get with him.
Let's talk
and
to Jerrad.
Talk to him and get some history. Well, hey, Jerrad, welcome to Generation X Paranormal.
Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Of course.
Yeah,
absolutely. And we're real excited to have you now. Truth be told, for our audience, we've met.
Yes, we have.
Where we met is the Glore. But before we get too far into that, can you kind of tell our audience a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. Well, my name is Jerrad, and I'm a staff person at the St. Joseph Museums, which is an umbrella organization for several museums in St. Joseph. One of them is the Glore Psychiatric Museum, which is among the largest psychiatric museums in the world. There's not a lot of them, and we are one of them. There are 4 floors here of the museum, and it is housed on the original grounds of what was once called the Lunatic Asylum Number 2 when it opened in 1874. So we are actually inside the surgery building. And both of you know this, the 2 buildings that we have are both of the surgery buildings, one from 1927, the other from 1968. So a lot of cool ground to cover here.
Yes.
For sure. No question about that at all. What kind of brought you to where you're at now?
Well, I worked in tourism for most of my life, and born and raised in St. Joe. I haven't always lived here, but I have been volunteering for the museum since about 2012 in different capacities. And I'm super nerdy about history, and St. Joseph history is just undersung and not well understood. St. Joseph was at one point in the top 100 biggest cities in the United States in the 19th century. So it was a big hub, and you would have seen a lot of stuff going on, and is the reason why there's so much architecture hanging around. So love to tell that story. And so I've been here for almost 3 years in this capacity, and I love it. It's like a dream job for me. And the paranormal side is really just a consequence of everything. You know, I'm in charge of renting out our spaces for all kinds of events, and I had no idea half of our event rentals are paranormal investigations. So if that tells you anything, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
We can see why after being there.
yeah, we can certainly vouch for it.
Yes.
But, so yeah, if you kind of want to, I guess, dive in, give us a little bit of a background of the Glore and kind of the history.
Sure. Well, 1874, when the lunatic asylum opens up, that's just a couple of years after the Civil War. And if you know anything about St. Joseph in this area, this was a prime area for Civil War activity. And so 1874, just a few years later, really dealing with the problem of traumatic wartime, frankly. You know, if you know about Civil War history, what happens immediately after the end is you have people self-medicating from about 1866 till about 1910. There are really no regulations on over-the-counter narcotics. So truly, for all of that time, it's just not really discussed, but people were self-medicating and you know, frankly, causing themselves mental illnesses. And so they end up here at the State Lunatic Asylum. By the time that 1910 rolls around, there's probably 3,000 patients in a building meant for 250 people.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, just that thought for just a second.
I know.
mean, wrapping your head around a spot that's designated for a couple hundred people to have that in the thousands, which I'm sure, whether you want to break into the paranormal thing or not, that alone would be enough to drive an energy of a place right through the roof.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, enough to drive people insane.
Right, who aren't obviously already
Are not.
suffering from
Yeah.
from a mental illness.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I know, if memory serves correct, when we were there, and it's been a little what about a month ago now.
Yeah, it's been a bit.
Yeah, time flies.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time and place where it was located at a different location, which is now a prison. So, yeah, can you talk a little bit about that? Because we found it really interesting how close in proximity everything was to that. That was a very interesting thing to kind of, I guess, not stumble upon, but just to kind of
To realize, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So all of the buildings that we see here at the campus, on the campus, were all a part of the original asylum. It's round about the 1990s when the Missouri River has a major flood, and it floods out a prison in Jefferson City. You guys may be familiar with that prison down there. It's now a museum. Well, those prisoners were sent up here to St. Joe to help sandbag for the flood. Well, simultaneously, the state hospital was downsizing. Federal funding had changed, and they were moving out of these old buildings into a new facility where they remain today. The state hospital never closes. It's still open. But that old building, the original Kirkbride building, the prisoners begin camping out while they're here helping. And they just never leave. The Missouri Department of Corrections now owns all of that space, but it was all the original lunatic asylum. People, when the museum opened in 1968 by George Glore, who was the occupational therapist at the state hospital at the time, it was housed in the original building, in the Kirkbride building. So we have visitors all of the time who tell us that they came here many years ago and they actually walked into the asylum where there were still patients. So you would still see patients while you were visiting the museum.
Oh, wow.
Wow. I mean,
I can't imagine that.
What a way to just show up and go, hey, I'm going to go to this museum.
I
Oh,
know.
by the way,
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
patient.
Yeah.
And that's
And,
the,
you know, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
well, I was just going to say that's kind of the key, and that is the magic behind what George Glore really intended. I mean, as an occupational therapist, you have to understand that those people are just thinking about people with mental illnesses in terms of just being other people who need help. And so he
Yes.
was trying to start the museum to help destigmatize a lot of the misconceptions that people have about people suffering from mental illnesses, you know? So
Absolutely.
for him, it was actually a good thing that they could walk in and see patients and also discover some of the history of it all. So
That's a great point because, you know, truth be told, this episode is going to be about, some paranormal events and things that happen. But I think the most important thing to drive home is kind of what you just said is that, everybody has to understand that a mental illness doesn't mean that, they're all of a sudden, they're granted they have a different view of society. They're not maybe exactly kind of in the same path that some of us walk, but they're still here and they're very important and still valid people in society. So,
yeah,
but yeah, that's really important to hammer home.
yeah. Thank you for saying
Now,
that.
truth be told, yeah, our audience knows that. I mean, I've been past military and I've had some things happen. So we've all walked a pretty tight line between what some people may call bad mental health or just not good mental health. And I've had to have a lot of help to get to where I'm at today. So,
Yeah.
it's good to destigmatize that for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, we don't want to be afraid of it. It's just more healthcare, and
Yeah.
we
Right.
all have family members or in some way or another are touched by, mental illness. So
Absolutely. So, that being said, let's go ahead and talk for just a second. Now, I know this is a dream position for you, and I know this wasn't exactly what you expected to stumble upon by kind of starting out where you're at, but now you've been there, and you know that there are potentially other people around you at any given time that you may not see
right.
or hear or know they're there. But and we know this because we were there. But can you kind of give us a couple? I guess start with one that I guess just a couple of experiences that you that kind of hammer it home for you.
Sure. Well, I did, like you said, kind of stumble into this position, but it's right up my alley because I love discussing reality. Like, what are we doing here? So I'm excited about it too. Now, I have largely stayed away from the paranormal, not because I don't think it exists, but because I just don't need it. Right? I'm having a human experience, etc. So, I would say the first 2 weeks that I was here in this official capacity, I opened up the museum, which again is housed in the surgery building from 1968, which has a morgue and an autopsy room in the basement, okay, which is open as an exhibit. And when I walked in, there's a jewelry rack on the wall, and before I even rounded the corner, it flew off of the wall and onto the ground.
Wow.
That's probably the most physical thing that's happened to me since I've been here. And I didn't.
That's pretty physical.
Yeah, I would say so.
And then during a paranormal investigation, it was a group of 7. This is my most memorable, and I probably share this the most. This was maybe about a year in. God, I've had so many now, they're starting to come back to me. But this one is unique because it was just not what you would be expecting. But the small group of 7 people were preparing to investigate, so we were on the first floor in front of the admissions desk. It would be hard for listeners to totally understand unless you've been here, but at the admissions desk, you are at least 200 feet from the conference room where we all set up, and so they had set up in the conference room, but now we were down several hundred feet by the admissions desk, and I was loading them onto the elevator, going to send them up to the second floor, and I was going to run up the stairs and meet them. That's how I like to do it. And as we are loading them onto the elevator, I look down into the conference room just briefly. I see one of them, dressed in a flannel, wearing a mustache, sitting in the chair looking back at me. I load the rest of them onto the elevator. I don't think twice about it because I'm thinking, well, someone's just waiting behind. I run up to, they get on the elevator, close the door, they go up, I run up to the second floor. When they get off of the elevator, all of the party is stepping out. So, yeah. So whatever was down at the conference room, I saw an entire apparition. And
Wow.
in that same evening, I saw it again. We were getting ready to cross from the admissions desk over to the old building on the first floor to see the tunnel. As I'm preparing, I'm giving a little story. One of them goes to the bathroom. We move across to the tunnel side, and I said, well, we're just going to wait here for a second until the last person gets back. And they said, oh no, we're all here. So that was 2 in a row that night that I saw an apparition. And in the same evening, and this is what I mean by paranormal not necessarily being scary, because that sounds a little frightening, but I had another experience in between all of that. I'm always on newspapers.com looking for information about St. Joseph history. I don't do a ton of psychiatric history. Cammie Jones, our marketing director, she runs the Glore Psychiatric Museum's social media, and so she does a lot of the digging there. We all do tours of the Psychiatric Museum, but mostly I'm just doing history of St. Joe. So I am not looking whatsoever for psychiatric history, but directly next to the column that I'm searching for is a piece about a woman called Rhoda Frost. And if you have newspapers.com, you can absolutely look this up. The psychiatric hospital was always in the papers. I mean, it was every other day they were talking about it. But Rhoda Frost in 1890, it said in the paper, was forcibly sent here to the state hospital. She had recently been married in Kansas City for 3 days, and that guy said that she was insane, and so they sent her to St. Joe. They stuffed her into a horse and buggy down at 3rd and Francis Street, which, if you know St. Joe history, that's like an iconic spot. And then they brought her to the state hospital, where we really never hear from her again. I have not been able to track down the rest of her story. But at the end of that little column, it said that Rhoda Frost has lived a life like that of a romantic novel, and we expect to report more about that. And they never do, as far as I can see. But so just an interesting little paranormal tidbit that came up. You know, it's like Rhoda Frost, Rhoda Moore, her married name, was calling to us. You know.
Wow.
That's and that kind of brings me to another point. Are there, I guess, for lack of better words, are there very, I guess, well-known entities, or ones that, you know, you've been there long enough now to have enough groups go through? Are there some that go, okay, this is pretty common that a lot of people stumble upon?
I think I haven't done enough to say that, because I've been almost 3 years here. I've probably done 80 investigations. And there's just so many, I guess you'd call them spirits.
Sure.
There's just so many. And so what we notice is that on every floor at any given time, you know, if you're using the right tools, you'll hear about 10 or 20 different situations, different styles of, you know, paranormal. So there's a lot going on, and I just have never noticed too much consistency in names, especially. But
yeah, I mean, that makes sense. There's a lot of people kind of coming in and out. So I mean, it would really depend upon the individualistic at that time, or the individual at that time, and kind of what's happening at that point. What I guess another thing that I find interesting is, and I'm trying to remember which floor. I'm pretty sure it's the 2nd floor, where the replicas of some of the.
I think that's something we need to clarify too. There are some like original artwork and stuff like that, and you can lend more to that, what's in there, just of what we saw. But there's a lot of replica type things that weren't actually used on patients. But I find it interesting. We had some experience, which we will talk about later on in the episode, with some of the replica, which I would have thought would have been tied to like something that was actually used. So I don't know what makes that hold on to energy.
Right, especially it being a replica.
Yeah.
What experiences, or what, I guess for lack of better words, what's going on with that room? Even though they're replicas, it seems that there are still, I guess, incidences. I mean, we had one, and, you know, we've known some people in the past that have had incidences, but they seem to be replicas.
Sure. I would say that I am sitting very close to thousands of dead patients right now. There is essentially a mass grave of almost 3,000 state hospital patients from the late 19th century, early 20th century, very close to where I'm sitting. So to try to tie any logic into it, I'm not sure we can, because there's just a lot going on. This is a big place with hundreds of years of history by now. And like I said in my little bio, you know, I tell people all of St. Joseph is haunted, and I believe that 100%. But with that big mass grave, and on top of the fact that we're in the surgery building, which means that all of the rooms that we're really exploring are surgical rooms, you know. And that room, of course, is the original Glore Museum. Those replicas were built by patients who were meditating on the particular styles of tools at the time, if you think about it, right? So it was in the 1960s, while they were building these replicas, thinking about themselves in the 1700s being treated with that equipment, you know. And so there's some stuff tied to that, I think.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense.
I mean, it just could be. I mean, they recognize it for something maybe that was used on them as well.
Right.
They don't know for sure it's not the original.
That's true.
Which we'll get into later. Like our experience, it feels like they would be tied to that thing.
It was definitely our experience.
But yeah. And I even thought maybe even some of the old wood was reused to build these replicas. Do you know if they ever used anything like that?
As a person who loves history, that's like such a good question, and I would like to know the answer, and I don't. But I will say that the wooden restraint cage, there are two of them in that room. One of them is obviously a replica, but actually one of them is not a replica. One of them is a real cage from the state hospital in St. Louis.
Okay.
And some people will notice, and when you guys come back here, we'll try to remind each other about it. But there is nail marks. You can see where people were
fingernail marks.
Yeah, fingernail marks. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Ooh, that's
I really wish I hadn't missed that this time around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's right in front of the. It's right in front of the replica dungeon.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. I know. Oh, yeah.
The right one?
It's like a
No,
dark brown.
That's the other one.
Yeah.
The one I'm talking about is where someone stands straight up. I think the one you're talking about is where they lay down.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
The one you're thinking of is the replica lunatic box, is what they call it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And which, you know, we can't get into every single thing that we saw because there's so much at this museum, and you know, we recommend everybody go see it. I mean, it was torture.
Yeah.
It was torture.
Yeah.
You know, and at the time they thought this is what's going to cure these people, but it was torture. I mean, it really, really was. And to look at this stuff and see what they went through is just no wonder. Yeah. You know, all this energy is trapped in these places. It was sad, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Torture by our standards, no doubt. But I think it's always worth noting that that anybody ever attempted to try to solve the problem is important, you know?
Yes.
And so, you know, humans are very good at carrying on bad ideas, so that's not
right.
Are we ever? Yeah, no kidding.
But, you know, at the time,
yeah,
this was like the new thing to try. So, I mean, that's what we have to... Yeah. Now we know better, but it was the new thing.
And think about 100 years from now, what'll people be like, I can't believe they actually did
Exactly.
That.
Exactly.
It always happens.
And they will, because if you really go look, I think we'd all be concerned about what's going on. So,
right.
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we know that this isn't the only place that you kind of set up guided tours or things like that for. Where are some of the other locations that you work with?
So most of our museums are housed here at the old campus, but the other location, which is equally as exciting, is the Wyeth Tootle Mansion, and it is built in 1879, so that's just 5 years after the state hospital opens up. Okay, so right in the same era. 1879 is also 3 years before Jesse James is killed, shot in the head by Bob Ford, just a few blocks away from there. You know, they were here in St. Joseph. Maybe people don't know that, but they were hiding out in St. Joe. and so yeah, 1882 is the year that he gets killed. Now, here's a little fun side note that has to do with the mansion house that's definitely haunted. Okay, in that same year, Oscar Wilde, the famous poet and playwright,
Mhm.
he comes to the United States on his American tour. Well, because St. Joseph is a big city, he comes to St. Joe. He gives his lecture on fashion and interior design at the Toodles Opera House, the proprietors of which are uh, eventually live in that mansion house. Just a couple of years later, they live in that mansion house. And so I love to tell that story. And so Oscar Wilde actually stays at what you guys now know as the Patey House.
Okay.
But when he stayed there, it was called the World's Hotel. And from his window, he can see throngs of people lined up at Jesse James's house because they're going to pick up relics. They're relic hunters. And he writes a letter back home to his friends saying that Americans love outlaws. So he's kind of roasting them.
That's true.
I love that little story.
That's an amazing story.
But yeah, I mean, the 19th century, in the time when this state hospital came around and when that mansion house came, this was a bustling big city with people like Oscar Wilde visiting, and a lot of things going on. The families who lived at the mansion house, they had butlers, they had servants. That's what mansions were really for. They were social houses. So if you'd have knocked on the door in 1888, a butler would have greeted you. You could have come in and had tea with the family or whatever, but you would have had servants all around. People sometimes go into these big mansions and they say, why did they build these? And it's just so lonely and scary. But initially, they were not places to be lonely. It was constant people everywhere. So that's something to think about. But it went through a couple generations of the Tootle family, and then it was turned over to the city of St. Joseph. It was St. Joseph Museum's first location. And so all of our collection used to be housed over there.
Oh, wow.
Yep, and it started around about, I guess 1927 is when it opens up initially. And then, through the years, the different directors and staff people, especially before there were any civil rights, this is all pre-1954, nobody was really playing by any rules. So they ended up, and subsequently we have now, a large collection of Native American artifacts, funerary objects, skeletons, yeah. And they're down
that right there.
They're down in the basement in proper boxes because we are currently working and following NAGPRA, the congressional laws, to repatriate these items, but it's a slow, difficult, complicated process. But yeah, so there's a lot of energy happening at the mansion house, and probably not in the least because of the objects that are inside of it.
Yeah, I'm just sitting there thinking about it. That's obviously with the record keeping and everything back then, it'd be really hard to repatriate. So there's going to be some overlap in time. And being native myself, well, half native, there's some pretty well documented. I mean, yeah, think about it. If your resting place has been disturbed and now you're somewhere where you don't feel like you're rested,
Yeah, but I mean, it's like the number one,
I know.
Rule in the paranormal world. If it's a Native American burial ground, you stay away.
Every single time. It is just...
It's always like the running joke.
Yeah. I mean, but it's based in some reality.
It is based in reality, yeah.
It's just wild.
Yeah.
So, Jerrad, what are some, kind of in closing here, what are some of the things with the Glore that you like folks to know? I mean, know that you've been there for some time, and is there some misconceptions or just some things that you'd like to kind of talk about?
Sure. Well, I would say, and we've already touched on it, but I just wanted to say again that we are not trying to do anything other than destigmatize mental illness. We're not trying to just be weird. That is a part of it. But we're also trying to remind people that mental illness has always been in our lives. Through every generation, it's just different styles of people dealing with the problem. And so, it's a hard problem. And people sometimes walk away and they say, wow, that's really tragic. And it is. But again, we know how difficult it is just to do anything. I mean, life can be very difficult. Now add mental illness to it, and then you've got yourself a real hard problem that clearly is difficult for everyone involved to solve. It's not an easy problem to solve. And so that's what we're trying to discuss here. The paranormal aspect is not really our fault. It's a consequence of the situation that we're all in. So we are glad to welcome investigators because it helps us raise money, and because we all are interested in it too, you know.
Sure.
And so it helps us do our work and do the job that we're ultimately here to do.
Yeah. I mean, that's great. And you're right. There's still despite, and that's the thing about the paranormal. A lot of people tend to, I don't know if they forget, but they get a little complacent that there's a human element behind all this.
Yeah.
At least if you're talking about that sort of entity.
Well, yeah, and paranormal investigators, they usually go to the places where people they know have been murdered or something like that, because we have history of that. But this is a place where it's tied to people's emotions. Mental health is definitely, and that is, I feel, a lot stronger. I mean, not saying that being killed is not like a massive like imprint on something, but when you live for years with something like that, your soul goes into things, and it may linger. So it's attached, and there's a lot of like things that the patients have created, I'll just put it that way, in this museum. So their heart and soul is in this.
Absolutely.
So that for I think that's the biggest impression of this place.
Yeah.
More than just like, going through something.
Yeah.
It's their life.
It's humanity's story.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. To tell the history of the United States, now that I understand this more, to tell the history of the United States is also to tell the history of mental health, because it happens almost immediately. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if there are paranormal investigators or just anybody that wants to come, rent the space, what can you tell them about that? How do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you can visit our website, easily Google searchable stjosephmuseums.org. You can find me there, Jerrad Hardin, and I'm in charge of the rental. So you can reach out to our main website or our main phone number, and I can tell you more about what that looks like. There are several options. We have multiple third parties like you all, and other organizations who regularly host investigations here. So you can either buy a ticket through them, or you can rent out the space yourself for something a little bit more private.
Terrific.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, Jerrad, thank you so much for carving out a few minutes today, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yeah, we'll be back.
Yeah, we'll be back.
Yeah, please come back. That was a lot of fun, y'all. And thank you so much again for having me. This has really been a nice conversation. So this is my second podcast, and this one is way better than the first time I did it. So
well, thank you.
I feel very honored about that. So we try to make it a good time. So, but again, thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerrad, so much for coming on and talking to us about the history.
Yeah.
Which he gave us that night before we started, which is always great to have before you go into something like this. And St. Joseph, like you said, was like a bustling city.
Yeah.
And those of us that live in Missouri know that it is not a bustling city now. So it was surprising for me to hear. However, people that may not know, it's the home of where the Pony Express started.
That's right.
Yeah. So they actually have a Pony Express museum, which we went through. We also went through the Jesse James house, like he spoke of.
Right.
Very, very cool.
Yeah.
Now, it's not in the same location that the house used to be.
Yeah.
They moved the house. So when you go there, don't think, this is weird. They actually did move the house. We also stayed right across from the mansion he was speaking about. We just didn't know it at the time. We were in an Airbnb called the Vineyard Mansion.
Yes.
So if you ever go there, I recommend staying there, restoring the old mansion.
Yeah, it's a great place.
It's really, really cool. So St. Joseph's got a lot actually to offer.
Yeah, and
I had no idea all that stuff was there.
Yeah, and the history and the architecture is just really cool. Now they've got, like every other major, every other major city, they've got a, your typical normal place now with like the Walmart and all these other different, creature comforts that we're used to now. But then there's a very historic part of it.
A historic part of the city.
And it is cool. The architecture is just, it's just a lot of fun to look at. The mansions in there. I mean, with this having been such a bustling place, it definitely shows
wealthy, wealthy individuals. And the Pony Express Museum is actually in the stables. Like, it's in where all the horses were.
It's
and
the
stuff,
real deal Holyfield.
Yeah, it was really cool. So I suggest you check it out. But without further ado, let's get on to the Glore.
The Glore.
So, as he said, there's a lot of people that there are unmarked graves, which are right next to the building where you are.
Yep.
When you pull up, you see the original building, that's now a prison, which when he spoke about the prisoners coming up from Jeff City, that is from
Missouri State Penitentiary,
which we have been.
Yes.
And just knowing those people were there, it makes a whole lot more sense.
Yes, it does.
As to why things are so, because we've done an episode.
Yeah, you guys should watch it.
You should go back and listen to it on the history of that. In itself is, crazy.
Yeah. What's amazing about that is the fact that, as he told the story, these guys come up and they just say, you know what, we're staying.
We're just staying.
Yeah, I don't care. It's just, we're going to stay. We don't care if you like it or not. You guys take the other building, we'll take this and go about your day. So,
yeah. But I mean, it's one of these old lunatic asylums that you always see, that were built during that time period. I mean, it's very ominous looking when you pull up. Yeah. Now, the museum is in, like the surgery building, like he said. So it doesn't look like that building.
No.
So it's off to the side. But it's right there.
Yeah.
These bodies are buried right there. And just, I mean, there's an energy. We all know this, to a place. And there's definitely an energy to this place.
Boy, is there ever. And for somebody who, I guess, struggles a little bit with being able to spot some things. Everybody's got that feeling when you first walk into a place where you're like, oh, crap. This was an oh, crap moment. With us being able to meet some friends and kind of go through it and enter it in a much more relaxed kind of situation.
Jovial state.
Yeah. It made it easier. But when we sat down and kind of go through a briefing of what we're going to see, it was pretty uneasy. I kind of had an uneasy feeling. But thankfully they do a really nice little preparation to help calm you down. But that's kind of just where things started.
Yeah. And, we spoke about this when we sat down with them to give them, our impressions of a first time. They're really great about how they divide things up. They divide you up into 3 groups, and you get to investigate with each person because they're all very different in the way they do their things. All great at it, just different.
Very different.
And so it's great to see the different. I have said great and different like 3 times.
But they are great and they're different.
They're different ways of investigating.
Yes.
So that was fantastic. I'm going to use this word now.
Fantastic.
So we started out with Mike.
Start with Mike.
And you actually go out of the building over to another building, which has got a tunnel.
Yes.
A closed off tunnel.
Yes.
That goes to
the actual prison.
Old asylum.
Side,
So they had to shut that so prisoners can't get out.
Yeah, they didn't want to Shawshank somebody.
Yes. But you go down in the dark tunnel. So I'll let you do this one because it's
pretty
interesting.
It's very interesting. So when you first show up and you first go into the building, it looks like anything else. I think there's like kind of a maintenance area on the right hand side and a few other, I guess, for lack of better words, rooms in that lower floor. But the tunnel, you wouldn't know is a tunnel because there's obviously doors that close, that go in between, obviously, as you would expect. But they're open, so you get in there. Now, keep in mind, we're there at night, right? And there's enough lighting there so you can get around.
In the room before you get to the
in the
tunnel,
room before you get to the tunnel, but the tunnel has 0 light. Now, I've got some video that we're going to put on here where you're going to see nothing, but you'll hear us. And I'll have to either boost up the brightness or whatever, maybe just show some pictures, but it is pitch black. So we first got in there and Mike was great. He showed us the REM pod. He showed us the K2.
And he had a DR60.
Yeah, a DR60. And then he had a...
we all had different things. We set up the lights.
Right, set up
on the floor.
light. The light is basically like a strand of lights where if I guess the common thought is if an entity passes through, it'll pick up on it and it'll light up.
It'll light up. Yeah.
Right. So there was that we put down, and but anyway, Mike kind of showed us. Oh, he also had a FLIR, so we were able to see.
Yes, he did.
You know, so that was pretty cool too. But anyway, long story short, it kind of runs through these things and says, "Hey, this is how you use this." Now we're going to go in the tunnel. And the only thing he takes with him is the DR60. And if you know what the DR60 is, this is an incredibly expensive, old,
very old
digital recorder that we used to sell at Radio Shack. So if I'd have known then what I know now. But he turned the REM pod on and left it on. I don't know if he did that on purpose, but it was on. And if you know what a REM pod is, we'll show a picture.
Yeah, this is outside the tunnel.
Right.
In the other room.
Right.
We need to specify that.
You're right.
Yeah.
So he puts that on the table and grabs a DR60 and we make into the tunnel. So we go down this tunnel and it gets darker and darker and darker. And it's not just like a little darker. It turns into pitch black. And the only thing you can see is maybe a couple of people have their phones with apps.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't seem as dark just because everybody had their little things on.
Right. So he takes us in there and kind of tells us what we're going to do. We're going to run what they call EVP sessions. And if you know what that is, it's just electronic voice phenomenon. And the common thought is that things that you don't necessarily hear can be picked up on digital recorder. Mm-hmm. And the DR60 is supposedly supposed to be the best, which is why they want so much money for them. But at any rate, so the first thing Mike does, he tells us something that Johnny L. Tenney explained to him, and that if everybody says the same thing over and over, kind of down the line or around in a circle, it gives it a little bit more power to it, so
and they're more likely to answer.
Right. And answer they did.
Yes, they did.
And we'll play it for sure, and we'll put it in right
here. About John Tenney. John Tenney. Does anybody know him besides me here?
I mean, I know of him.
Super nice guy. He used to do something called the Circle of Trust. And that is, and it works like this. The old-time investigators used to think that if you just bombarded the spirits with the same question over and over and over. Lucky girl.
Agreed.
Whoa! Wait a minute.
No.
Well, that was interesting.
Yeah.
First of all, you're not alone. Secondly, that's not anger. It sounds like frustration.
It sounded to me a little bit like a scream.
It does, but you can't really tell. I mean, it sounds like frustration.
Right, and that's what he says.
And number one, it's frustration. Now, whether it's words or it's a scream, we don't know for sure because it's inaudible. You can't really tell.
Yeah.
But for you guys, it may not be that, but when you're standing in complete darkness in a tunnel like that, it's like, woo.
Yeah. And as you guys could hear, it's very audible. It's not like you had to reach down into the soles of your gut to hear.
It was loud. It was really
and
loud.
Imagine being there. You guys hear it, just on your speakers, wherever you're hearing it from. You can imagine what it's like to hear it right there. And right then and there that you're not alone. Mm-hmm. Now, another incident that happened, and we'll go ahead and put it on here. I recorded it off a Ghost Tube, and it's an app if you guys don't know what it is, but and I'll put this here.
Did you hear that?
I did. The bang?
Yeah.
I heard it.
Tell them not to, because I go to sleep. You guys hear anything back there?
Yeah, we heard a bang over there.
I've even heard a bang.
Irene, is that you?
Time out. Where'd we get the name Irene?
So over where the washer and dryer is.
Yeah, it's
I got,
the REM pod's going off on the table.
I got Irene, and she commented on my
Sure,
tattoos.
we're down here and it goes on.
That's just exactly what you said.
Yeah.
Now, what that was is us at the very end, like Nicole was saying, at the end of the tunnel, but the REM pod is
going
up at
off
the
in
top.
the other room.
Right, and it's
Yes.
going off. So, what do you do with that? It's one of those where nobody's there. you know for a fact nobody's there. But the interesting part was we were sort of wrapping up that part of it. And as we're walking towards the doors, everybody could see there was motion going.
Yeah, shadow.
Yeah, shadows going in between. And they weren't past the door. They were in that room. Now, we know for a fact there was nobody else there. So, you know, I think
This is within the first 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, 10, 15 minutes. We're just kicking off.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I remember, I think I looked at you and said, if this is how this is going to go, you know, and it's true.
It was awesome, though.
It was a blast.
Yeah.
But, so anyway, we make our way up there, and, you know, that was probably for the most part about it. I think you guys went to a room. So there was apparently a maintenance worker up there.
Mike sent all of us women into the maintenance because there's supposed to be a man there that doesn't like women being in his shop, basically.
Right. Yeah.
So we were asking questions. I don't really remember anything significant coming through on that. I will say, though, I felt uneasy in that room.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it didn't really feel uneasy much through the night, except for certain things, and I'll make sure and tell when those times were. But I did feel a little like, I shouldn't be here. Like, that was my, like, I shouldn't be here.
Get out of my shop.
Yeah. Apparently that happened, though.
Yeah.
Like, he told somebody to go or leave. I can't remember exactly what it was. I don't know if it was somebody in our group before. It was the last time they were there. Yeah, it was something like that. He actually told them to leave.
Yeah.
So that's where they got the idea, like, he just doesn't want women there.
Yeah.
So.
And keep in mind, guys, this is, like Nicole said, this was 10, 15 minutes starting in the investigation, and we were there several hours.
Well, and I think we got about an hour or 45 minutes.
Yeah, about 45 minutes.
Each leader of the group. So, so then we take a break, basically, and we switch.
Yes, we do.
So next we go to Erica.
Erica, the rock star.
Which I love Erica.
Yeah, she's pretty
so sweet.
awesome.
So we go down to the bottom, which Jerrad was talking about. There was a morgue. So
and an operating room.
Yeah.
Just throw that in there, too.
Yeah. So Erica's great about using pendulums and dowsing rods to communicate.
Lo-fi.
And yeah, if you haven't heard about that, we do have an episode that we, with Dan and George, they speak about that. Erica's great to reach out to, but I had never in real life seen anybody do it. And so she was, demonstrating that throughout our time with her of how to do it. And I just find it fascinating.
Yeah. I think the part that I find, I guess I shouldn't find it fascinating, but I do, is that, we've got all this, and don't get me wrong, everything's got a place. But we've got, in fact, I'm staring at a bag of equipment that we own. We're just like, that's a significant investment. There's a lot of money tied into it. And then you get with somebody like Erica or with Dan or, some of these guys that they use just the instruments that people had.
Yeah, Dan's like, it's just a rock on a string.
Just a rock on a string. Or dowsing rods. And anybody that knows dowsing rods is typically it was used to find water. And, there's a lot of electromagnetic with water when it runs underneath. So it responds to electromagnetics. Well, depending on how you believe and the kind of the camp that you reside in when it comes to paranormal and when it comes to ghosts, there's a lot of electromagnetic interference, which is why EVPs work, why people use K2s and all these things, because it's monitoring electrostatic discharge and all these other sort of things.
And it uses your own intuition.
Right. Right.
So that's what is just, it's fascinating.
Yes.
And I have started using them.
Yes, she has.
And I will say it does well.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, it does well.
You set a base down that says, okay, this is yes, this is no. And there's a lot more to this, guys. We're just giving you a 30,000 foot view here.
And I should say they provide all this stuff for you. So if you want to try it with Epic VIP events, they provide everything for you. You don't have to bring your own stuff.
And by the way, it's not like it's cheap gear. They have state-of-the-art stuff.
Yes, they do.
So you don't have to come with a single thing. You can. There were people there that had devices and stuff. And
there were paranormal groups.
Yeah, like an Ovulus and things like that. But you don't have to.
Mm-hmm. It's to learn, basically. And there was a little bit of stuff that happened in the morgue. Yeah, the K2 meter was definitely going off while we were asking questions.
Yeah, and
they wanted somebody to get
Yeah, in fact, I've got
in the freezer.
Yeah, and I've got a recording of it off of GhostTube, and we're going to put it right here.
And then he was like starting to feel really
Tap.
uncomfortable, and as he's like, I gotta get out of here,
Tap.
it grabbed his
Joe.
Tap Joe.
More.
More. You want us to tap Joe
Some
more?
Some of these, Chad has dad jokes if you want jokes. It did say Joe or joke?
Joe.
Joe.
Yeah, tap Joe.
Machine.
Kneel.
You want me to kneel? All right.
Somebody in there? Can
Are you in
see
here?
now? Can you touch that red light?
So yeah, I kind of feel like they wanted me to get in there as I was coming around that. You know, of course, we saw the K2 go off, and I started feeling kind of like I was getting gravitated. I was getting pulled to the
Well,
more
didn't it
doors.
tell you to like get down or
Yeah,
something
it
like
told
that?
me to kneel.
Yeah, and so it was wanting you to crawl in there. I
Yeah,
think.
and I wasn't having any of that.
No, I don't think I would have done that either. But I mean, after that, you're allowed to go kind of roam on your own. They show you, and then you can. And there's other stuff, excuse me, on that floor that you can go see. So they've got exhibits up of treatment rooms, and they've got, like I mentioned before, you know, there's a lot of art, and there's a lot of, and I don't want to give everything away because I want people to go to this place, but there's, you know, significant things that people that were in these institutions worked on. So you can walk around and do all that and investigate in those places.
I always give like a 30,000 foot view. There's like quilts, and then there's some other stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean it's all artwork. There was actually, you know, like a mechanic shop, so they've got things like that there. So, so I mean, there's a lot more there than you think.
Very much.
I mean, it's
so.
a 3-floor building.
Yeah.
That you know, just as a museum during the daytime is enough to just see. But if you're going to investigate, I mean, there's a lot there to investigate.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's go to the third thing.
Okay.
So we take a break. Now we're with
Sam. Yeah.
She is fascinating.
Yeah. There's so many things about every one of these people, especially, you know, Mike
They all
and
have their
Erica.
own. Yeah.
Yeah, and we can't say enough about them, but Sam has a very interesting
Gift.
The gift is a great way of putting it. She's helped with some well, you can talk a little bit about that with the like police department and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's on our episode with them. I mean, we have an episode where we interview them, so we don't want to go into detail here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, she's a very special person.
Right.
But the floor
Yeah, we go
that she gets to be on is significant.
Yeah,
So
so that's
this is the one that I felt weird. I felt something off on.
yes.
So they have a room down the hallway at the end that has, which apparently weren't all replicas, but the majority of them were replicas of what you would look at as torture devices, basically.
Yeah.
But for the time period, this was their treatment
Right.
for especially the bad cases, like anybody that probably had schizophrenia or, you know, something that was just completely foreign to them at that time, and they didn't have medications or anything
Right.
developed yet to restore those chemicals in the brain. So instead they're like, okay, let's try this.
Yeah.
And I think we need to talk about a few of them because
Sure. Yeah.
it will lend credence to kind of what happened. I mean, there's one, and some of this stuff, they don't tell everything there. Like, I remember looking on the website before we went to see, there's one case where they dipped them in, like, cold water, like,
Yeah.
up, in and out.
Like ice bath type stuff. Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember, there was, like, what else was in that room? I mean, they had, like, the prison cells, basically. They just locked them in there.
There was one where they would I guess something would cover their head. Trying to remember, it was like a light or water. They would use water or something
It's
like
almost
that.
like waterboarding.
Yeah, like waterboarding.
Yeah.
And that, yeah.
I mean, it was very uncomfortable, even though, you know, like some of these things are replicated, knowing that it even existed in the first place and that we did this to people. I mean, everybody's seen those old movies of like these psychiatric hospitals. I mean, they would do terrible things.
Yeah.
But when we walked in, you already feel a little unnerving in this room.
Yep.
And I'm going to let you go to this because this is what you were drawn to.
Yeah. So how do I even think about framing this?
We've got a picture of the,
yeah. So we'll put
box.
the picture here. Anyway.
Jerrad did confirm this is a reproduction.
Right.
So it's not actually, but I still wonder if the wood wasn't repurposed or
yeah,
something.
And he said that was a great point.
Yeah.
But as I'm walking to this door, we're walking down the hall, and it's very dark. But down the end of the corridor, you see these replicas, and we'll put some pictures up here. You guys can see it. Mm-hmm. I start getting this like weak need feeling, and I get this. I get like a gut feeling where I feel kind of nauseous. And I used to think it was just GERD because, everybody suffers from that from time to time. Or acid reflux, whatever you want to call it. But I've come to find out that for me, that's not always the case. So we're kind of making our rounds through the actual first part. There's two sections in this room. But on the right hand side, there are the one Jerrad was talking about where they laid the
and had the fingernail
right,
scratches,
the fingernails,
which ugh. Now that I know
Yeah,
that, we
I
go
know.
back.
Yeah. And so anyway, you're kind of making your way around, but then there's this kind of standing, we'll just call it device.
Box.
And it's called the lunatic box, which if there's ever a word for it that's terrible, that'd be one of them. But it's the lunatic box. And as I got closer to it, I started feeling like a sense of doom, a sense of loss. It's just like a really weird feeling. And I remember looking over at you going, there's something going on here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I've got a clip of a little bit of that here. But yeah, I kind of had this like very strange feeling.
It's just so, and I think Sam even tried to do some psychometry on it, and I don't think she got anything.
Not at first.
She didn't say anything anyway. I don't know if anything came through or not, but if it's a replica, that would make sense.
Well, and then what we did is everybody in the group came to that particular place, and Sam for some reason singled me out, and I think she probably knew that I had.
She sensed it.
Yeah,
I
she
think.
sensed it.
Yeah.
So she said, well, where do you want to go? And I said, well, I want to go here. I want to focus on this particular box. So we start this EVP session. And, well, here, I'm going to go ahead and play it for you here.
Orders on, just speak clearly so we can understand you into that little red light. There's plenty of energy with us in this room for you to draw from. Can you tell us the name of one of us in this room? There's somebody that you're looking for. You don't have to stay with that box anymore. You asked me twice when I was in here, what did I do? You know what you did to get in there? Or did you not do what they thought you did, and that's why you're in there? Okay, so then. Are you talking about a nurse or a doctor? Is there anything that we can do for you? Would you like us to say a prayer? Thank you.
Yeah, so for some reason, this person, entity, whatever you want to say, wanted to talk to me directly.
It didn't really answer many other people's questions. It answered one of mine. I don't know if it was the same spirit, though.
Tough to say.
And the only one I asked is if there... I don't remember what I asked. It's on there.
Yeah, you guys heard it.
But they said out there. Are
Yeah.
you here? Out
Are
there.
you here? Out there.
And that tells me they're buried out in the...
Yeah.
Which is so sad. It just...
It really is. So yeah, there was that experience, and I gotta admit, as the longer that we were there, I started feeling an attachment. And I was really concerned about that. And I remember us leaving that area as we were done. And I remember you asked me, do you want to go back? I said, no, I think I need a breather.
But I made
that.
you.
Yeah, you made me.
Because I think it was important to say, you can't follow me.
Which we did.
Even though, like, I almost felt heartbroken about it. Like, I think there was some connection there. And maybe it's just, like, because you've had mental health issues and maybe they had the same thing, and maybe there was that connection, of struggle, possibly.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking. Like, I imagine these paranormal investigators that go into these places and they feel this connection with something. That's the hardest thing, is like, you don't want to leave, like, especially a place like this.
Yeah.
That they went through stuff like that. You don't want to leave them there.
No.
Like, it's so sad. It kind of broke my heart a little bit, but I also was like, I don't want that coming home with
I got enough issues going on. I don't,
No.
and it wasn't a bad feeling. A lot of people go in these places and
it was a sad feeling.
Yeah, it was a very sad feeling. You really felt for these people, and you could feel the
anguish.
The anguish that anguish is a good word, that these people were going through. But yeah, it was.
I even remember Jessica at that one point saying that she started feeling really sad and like she wanted to cry.
Yeah.
On that one floor that we were on.
Yeah.
And I'm, I feel very familiar with that feeling. I didn't get to that point because I think I kept myself, kind of walled off from it, but it was, seeing these replicas, this is what people went through, and it's just devastating.
For sure.
But the kicker, I think, which we tried out the Estes method at the Spirit Con when we met Mike and Sam and Erica, or I did at least. I'm not great at hearing stuff. I'm going to say that. Like, I focus really hard, and if something came through, I probably just didn't catch it.
Right.
I'm bad at like hearing EVPs, everything, but I did feel taps on the headphones, which is weird, and we weren't in a quiet environment. There was people moving all over the place. So Sam does the Estes method.
Yes.
On the top floor.
And folks, when she says the Estes method, there are some people, I won't name drop or anything, that have reached out to Sam. She's very well known.
That they want her to do this with them. Yes.
There's some very big names, the paranormal community that have worked with her. And I don't say that just to throw that out there. It's because
she's great at it.
Right, she's fantastic.
I think there's just something with her that connects.
Yeah.
And she can pick up every word, and because I've even, told her, I've watched these things on TV, and you can't always trust everything on TV, but they never get as much as what she got that night. No. And I was only 2 or 3 feet away from her. I was just blown away watching the session go on. It was a full conversation. Conversation.
I'll let you talk about that one, because we did some filming, but out of respect for Sam, we've decided not to put it in.
And actually, I think that's posted on their page.
Oh, that's right.
If you go to their page, and follow them on Facebook, scroll down, she's got it there.
That's right.
You can go and watch it, and she does them pretty much everywhere I think they go, and most of the time I think they post it. So we're not going to put it on here, but we would like you to go visit their page and see what they're about, because they were so gracious to invite us, and they've been great people and so friendly, and we love them to death. So
we do.
Please go visit their site and go to one of their investigations, because it's just, for sure, it's fun. You learn a lot. They make you feel like family. So I 150% encourage that. But yeah, anyway, back to the Estes session. It was a full-on blown conversation.
Crazy.
The craziest thing I've ever seen and experienced.
Yeah, Mike would kind of give you an idea of what it looked like, and if you guys see it on their page, everybody's kind of seated in kind of like a half moon.
We're just all kind of in a hallway.
Yeah, we're just hanging out in a hallway, and Sam's directly across from us. So she puts these things on, and I won't go through the whole explanation of Estes.
No, you cover your eyes, put the headphones on, and the SB7 box goes
Right.
through.
Right. But they
Static.
can't hear you.
No,
You know,
so
so
she cannot hear anything we're saying, any of the questions that are happening, any of the responses. She is just saying what she hears.
Right. And when there's a full-on conversation, so
Going between somebody that we can hear what she's saying
Right.
and her the entire time. It was so crazy. And we had to stop it.
yeah,
I mean, it was almost to the point, which I don't want to blow it for you if you want to go watch it, but
You
like
should
at the
watch
very
it.
end. And I've watched several of theirs that they've done, so they always do this. They can only let her go for so long because it does drain her
it's very
energy.
draining.
And she's very much affected by it, so they have to tap her out eventually. So Mike will count down, like, if you want to say anything else, you got this much time to. And during this one, it was like, kind of like slapping back. It was very sarcastic.
Very.
Like, so Mike would be like 7, 6, and they'd be like 5.
Yeah. Kind of like you'd expect
Crazy.
like a
little kid to do.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was wild.
It was.
Folks, she could not hear us.
No.
That's the thing that just, I can't hammer home enough. You know, the fact that this Estes method, you know, the whole intent is that deprivation and being able to just say what you hear. And you get some out there where you see where there's a couple of things that kind of line up. Mm-hmm. Guys, this was a full conversation.
And it was so loud, like the static coming through. You can hear it through her headphones
Absolutely.
sitting far away. So there's no way she could hear anything
No.
we're saying.
But-
I mean, if you're a skeptic about it, I mean, you just got to be there.
Yeah.
There's no way. No way.
Yeah, for sure. So, the Glore.
Fantastic location, sad history.
Yes.
But just like Jerrad said, this is something that you should see
Yep.
and to learn about our history so we don't repeat it.
Yep.
Mental health is very important. It's something that, you know, that Glore actually tried to do. Like
Yeah.
he said, he had people coming in, seeing the patients so that society wouldn't just be like, oh, they're crazy.
Right.
You know, like that typical, oh, they're insane type stuff. To see that, you know, maybe these newer methods, by the time he opened the museum, like it was,
Well, yeah.
you know what I mean? It
talking-
wasn't like when it started. So, you know,
I don't know. You say that, but sometimes I think about like, I definitely want to do an episode of this someday, but like MK Ultra and stuff like that.
Well,
they
that's-
were still kind
it's
of,
government stuff, though.
Well.
That's completely different.
yeah.
But, you know, I mean, the way we started to try to treat these things, I mean, it used to be nothing was treated at all. Then people were self-medicating. Then at least they opened a facility to try to help people, even though it was not the greatest way to do it, go by it. But we learn from those things.
We sure do.
Science, that's how we learn, right?
Science.
This is not the right way to do something. That, you know, there are medications, there are things that can help. But I think just to see the history of it and to see what these people went through.
Yeah.
And if you are a paranormal investigator, even if you're not a paranormal investigator, if you're just curious, I mean, they rent the place out.
Yeah.
You can contact Jerrad. And I think it's important to do that because we need to take the stigma off of hauntings and paranormal because it's normal.
Yeah.
It's not.
Paranormal.
It's really not.
It's
I mean,
not.
our daily lives are surrounded with it. People
Yeah.
just shut it off.
That's
And they
right.
don't want to think about it because it is scary.
It is scary.
In the beginning, at least.
Very scary.
It's
in the
scary.
beginning.
To open yourself up and think about the other possibilities of afterlife and things that can happen to your soul and all these things. And the fact that these people went through this.
Yeah.
Are they still tied to that stuff, which is a very sad fact.
It is sad.
If they are.
Yeah.
But I encourage you to contact him if you want to do it. It's a great place to go. I guarantee that Mike and Sam and Erica will be back
Oh, for sure.
to the Glore. So
Yeah.
if, you know, you need to go and follow their page because they announce
Mm-hmm.
whenever. And I think they've got a special place where they announce like all their investigations. So go on their page and follow them and they announce when they have tickets available. But if you're going to do something like that, you need to get them quick because they go really,
fast.
really fast.
Yeah.
Really fast. And I think they're trying to branch out and go, you know, places other than Missouri.
Oh yeah,
and
they've been
branch
in
a little bit.
like to Arkansas. They've been been a few places. Yeah.
Yeah. But they get into some great places. They're perfect people to learn from. yeah, I mean, that's basically all I have to say.
Well, you guys know what I feel because I went through it.
Yeah.
I mean, I lived it. It was an experience like I've never had in my life before.
Yeah, he was pretty shook up
yeah,
by that one, I think. And he was exhausted. I don't think
Yeah.
I had to drag him into the the Vineyard Mansion after because we finished. We didn't get back till about, 1 a.m.
Yeah,
or
about
something.
1 or so.
And he was just devastatingly tired.
Yeah, it tanked me.
Exhausted. And, we had to check out. We had to drive home. And I had to drive because he was so exhausted. So it really did take something away from him. So that
she got to
shows
drive
right
the Rubicon, so
I don't get the chance very much.
yeah.
But no. So the Glore, fantastic location. Even if you don't want to do the, investigation part of it, it does run as
It's
a
important
museum.
history.
Yeah. So go during the day, check it out. And I mean, there's other things you can see. Like
Yeah.
we did all of them.
St. Joseph's is
You
cool.
can do it in a day.
We did it in a
Pony
day.
Express.
Yeah.
The Jesse James murder house.
That's right.
It takes like 10 minutes to go through. I mean,
There's not much to it. It's pretty small.
I'm talking tiny.
Yeah.
And there's another museum attached to that one.
Yes.
That other place. We didn't do that.
No.
But yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the Glore.
That's the Glore, guys. And we'll see you guys next week.
See you next week.